Welcome back, everyone, in War Eagle. My name is Eddie Orantes, and I'm the Director of Business Operations for the Office of Alumni Affairs at Auburn University. And for the next 30 minutes, your host of 18 minutes and 56 seconds, the Auburn Alumni Association Speaker Series. To see all of our shows, you can go to aub.ie/1856 series. We want to keep this fast moving. So all our guests will talk or present to do whatever they do for no more than 18 minutes and 56 seconds. And we also want to hear from you. So please ask questions, interact by leaving comments on our Facebook page. We'll do our best to answer them in the half hour that we have together. Today, my guest is Dr. Frank Skip Bartol, alumni professor and associate dean for research and graduate studies at Auburn University for the College of Veterinary Medicine. Dr. Bartol, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Eddie. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about our Canine Performance Sciences program today.
And we're equally excited to learn about when the program started, to learn about vapor dogs, and to really grow more endeared with the program and the puppies. And I know that there's so much more to the puppies than them being adorable animals, right? There's a huge responsibility and weight that they carry. Before we go and talk about the dogs, I would like to know more from you. I don't know if you've seen this show before, but one thing that we enjoy doing is getting to know the ethos of every speaker, who they are, why they chose what they are doing, and then we move towards the program. So if you don't mind, would you share with us your Auburn story?
Well, it's much easier for me to talk about this Canine Performance Sciences program and the puppies than myself, but a little bit of background. I joined the Auburn faculty in 1983 as a reproductive and developmental biologist, physiologist, and researcher. Along the line there, I became involved in establishing the Cellular and Molecular Biosciences program at Auburn, for which I served as director for a period of time. Skipping ahead, in 2009, I had the opportunity to join the College of, assume the position of Associate Dean for Research at the College of Veterinary Medicine, and here I am to this day. It was through that position that I became engaged routinely with the AUCVM Canine Performance Sciences program and its remarkable leadership in Drs. Paul Wagner and Craig Angle, and that's since expanded to include Dr. Melissa Singletary, a new assistant director, Dr. Lucia Lazarowski, and many others, professionals in that program, and the impact that that program has made, as we'll discuss, on the nation and the world is truly remarkable.
Tell us about the dogs. One curiosity of ours is always they're puppies, they're adorable, they're wonderful dogs, but why this particular breed, and how did these dogs become part of who we are now?
Well, while different dogs have been used for various purposes in the detection world at different times, our dogs now in Canine Performance Sciences program are Labrador retrievers. Most of these dogs descend from a genetic line of dogs that came to us via Australia quite some number of years ago. And since that time, over more than 20 years, the CPS leadership, the scientists in CPS, have employed a state-of-the-art genetics selection, quantitative genetics, and now more recently genomics and so forth, to advance these animals for the specific purpose of advancing their capacities as detector dogs.
Oh.
And these guys really are, as we'll see in a minute, the guardians of the galaxy as it pertains to the detection of chemicals, explosives, biologicals, and even electronics.
Well, let's take a look at a video that explains this further.
Great.
Auburn has a unique situation in that we have a very sophisticated MRI research center, coupled with a program in Canine Performance Sciences, which looks at the performance of working dogs. So the first work we've done with functional MRI, which is funded by an agency called DARPA, is to look at how the brain processes odor information. So we have a strong interest in that because we work with detector dogs. Auburn has developed a odor delivery device that is synchronized with the MRI scanning. And they have devised a a device that allows us to, in a very controlled fashion, deliver odorant to the dog at a precise time so that we can synchronize that with the MRI scanning. This is the first time that this type of olfactometry has been combined with functional MRI. We're actually looking not just at odor information and how dogs process odor, but we're also looking at a broader spectrum of the cognitive activity of dogs. Things like instructions or commands, how they perceive familiar faces, for example, versus unfamiliar faces. Canine Performance Sciences has learned through its functional MRI work with dogs much more about how the dog processes odor information. So we're beginning to understand better how that information is categorized in the dog's brain.
Hi, I'm Pam Haney, the Canine Performance Sciences Manager. Our program in the College of Veterinary Medicine is unique. We breed, raise, and train future vapor wake detection dogs through their first year of life. Once they graduate, the Auburn Dog will become a canine hero. Our puppies eat over 23,000 pounds of food a year, and it costs over $17,000 to raise each puppy. Thoroughly trained to save lives at home and abroad, the Auburn Dog can detect harmful and dangerous products and devices in airports and other locations that represent targets for potential harm. These canine heroes have been effective in locating everything from live viruses to Burmese pythons in the Florida Everglades.
That's remarkable. They truly are. They truly are working dogs, and I'm hoping that you'll give us a scope, the full scope of what that means in the canine world. Would you mind expanding on that a little bit more?
No, not at all. First of all, let me point out that this is an interdisciplinary, if not transdisciplinary effort. We work with effectively every science and technology college on campus to make this happen, such as the MRI Research Center. In terms of the scope and impact, from over 20 years ago with the development of the improvised explosive device detection dog that had a tremendous transformative effect on saving the lives of soldiers in the field, to the advancement and ultimately patenting of the vapor wake technology, which allows developed a methodology to allow dogs to sample the air around people, so that, and many of our alumni will think about going to the football games where you see the dogs at the gate. They're not interrogating every single of the 80 or 90,000 people. They're detecting odors in the air. They're sampling the air, all the way to advancements of autonomous guidance using GPS and other tools developed in partnership with our colleagues in engineering to allow dogs to work independently or autonomously at some distance from the handlers, so that they can be reporting back, if you will, literally in terms of what they're detecting. The impact is significant. I will talk more about this in a minute. I know, and I see a video there of dogs being worked and assessed in terms of their performance in the corner. Let me just point out that this endeavor is informed by both national and international agencies concerned with national and international security and public safety. So the impact is truly not just national, but international in scope. And by consequence, Drs. Wagner and Angle and others serve on panels that are designed to advance best practices and standards for the validation of these technologies where the dog is concerned. I hope that gives you some perspective.
Well, it really does, and it helps to have video footage to give us a better sense of the full, I guess, continuity or development from that puppy stage all the way through training, all the hands that touch that dog into that that precise working dog that gets the job done, not only locally, as you said, nationally and internationally. And so I appreciate you sharing some of that information. There is also a scientific validation that takes place in the court system. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
So the validation itself doesn't take place in the court system, but it takes place for the purpose of making sure that, especially our law enforcement agencies that are going to depend upon the validity of information that they gain from a dog saying, there is the, think about the Boston Marathon bombers, for example. You know, had there been dogs in that scenario, there were not, at least our dogs, but if the dog said, there is the bad guy, what is the validity of that information communicated, if you will, from the dog to the handler, to the people that were watching it? And so the scientific validation occurs in programs, particularly the CPS program, where we say, answer questions like, first, can the dog detect the target of concern? Under what conditions can the dog detect the target of concern? And what is the evidence that that dog is correct X% of the time? Obviously a very high percent of the time, you know, in excess of 90% of the time, for example. That information and the metrics required to demonstrate validity are very significant value and concern to people that work in law enforcement and depend upon information from canine detector dogs to establish a case for the presence of the threat that was the source of the problem.
Let me ask you this question then, Doctor. The credibility or the impact that our program in Auburn makes internationally, how much of an impact is that?
Well, the impact is substantial. For example, we have agencies in the federal government that depend upon us to address questions of priority concern to them that extend, for example, from the Department of Justice through the FBI to the Office of Naval Research and the U.S. Naval Research Lab, internationally, the Defense Science and Technology Laboratory in the UK, the TSA, the people that do airport security, Customs and Border Patrol, and our colleagues that are part of our large extended team of collaborators that make these kinds of things possible. And obviously the impact there, if you look at where CPS technology and the dogs that have been developed in this environment have had an impact. We're talking about entities such as Amtrak, the New York Police Department, Disney, the NCAA, the NFL, and beyond. So the impact is huge. And of course, if we continue to be lucky, no one will notice. But we know, and particularly the CPS leadership is always and every day aware of the fact that lives are at stake, that this is not a game, and the validity of this technology saves lives.
That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And because our viewership is alumni based, I would like to take the time to thank those that contribute to this program to make this program possible and continue to contribute, because it is a large impact of who we are as Auburn and what we're doing, both nationally and internationally. So I'm really happy that we're having this discussion now. I think it matters. Here's some questions that came through from Facebook. What are the ways that a dog lets its owner know if he has found something? And how does a dog learn what scent it needs to locate?
Well, I'll start with the first question first. Obviously, and you saw Dr. Wagner talking about magnetic resonance imaging, that round looking sort of scary instrument that you saw the dogs jumping on there. Obviously the dog can't tell you, like the dog from Up, I think we're going to see him in a little while, but the dog can't say, hey, that's the stuff you wanted me to find, right? So we use science, technological advances such as MRI, help us provide objective evidence as to whether the dog can actually smell the target odor. Otherwise, the dog is trained to give a tell. That tell might be something, I think we're going to see a video here, but that might be something as obvious as I smell it and therefore I sit down, but it could also be more subtle tells that communicate to the handler. It's important to know that this area of operational dynamics is important. And so developing technologies that help to refine and ensure the precision and accuracy of the dog's detection of the odor are things that are being worked on by CPS, so that not only can an experienced trainer say, yes, that dog just told me it detected the odor, but there will be various technologies that gate that event and confirm that what the handler is seeing or the information it's receiving from the dog is in fact a positive response. In terms of imprinting the dog on an odor, the CPS team has developed very precise ways to go about that, all the way, and you'll see in a little bit, I believe you'll see a dog running around a device that's called a scent wheel. It'll be obvious why it's called a scent wheel when you see it. The CPS team, among other approaches, will take everything other than the source of the odor out of the picture so that they know that the dog is only being exposed. It's already eliminated the possibility of the container that it's in, the material or fluid that may be present, all of the other kinds of things, and can know that the dog is focusing on that particular odor or set. Usually it's a set of odors that it's actually sensing. Obviously, we don't know what the dog is detecting literally, because the sensitivity of the dog nose is so great that today there are no analytical instruments that can actually detect the same level that a dog is capable of detecting.
That's remarkable. So if you put the canine and compete with technology right now, what you're saying is the canine will win.
The dog wins. That's right.
Let's do this. Let's watch a little clip on for Up to get a sense of what it would look like.
Hey, look, he's trained. Shake. Uh-huh. Speak.
Hi there.
Did that dog just say hi there?
Oh, yes.
Bruh!
My name is Doug. I have just met you, and I love you. My master made me this collar. He is a good and smart master, and he made me this collar so that I may talk. Squirrel!
Exactly. And so our CPS team is working with colleagues around the country, particularly, for example, at Georgia Tech, but also elsewhere, to develop and implement the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to approximate, that's sort of the goal we just saw, that collar on our friend in Up, but to approximate that type of thing such that there could be no doubt that dog just saw a squirrel, right? If that's what its target was. So those types of technologies are being actively pursued by CPS.
That's wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about the academic and that student experience. And I believe we do have a slideshow that I'd like to be able to share so that we can talk through, if you don't mind sharing with us, what that looks like and how this program helps these students.
Right, so obviously we have a lot of dogs involved in this program. The dogs are all positively reinforced. They have to have care. And of course, we have a breeding program. We don't have a production program, but we have a breeding program to optimize the genetics specific to the detector dog. So what you're seeing in this sequence, Dr. Robin Wilburn, Dr. Amy Johnson, and veterinary students who are learning in this specific example about reproductive management of dogs. But I want to say that at Auburn, we extend the opportunity for students to engage with CPS to undergraduate students, because the whole process of development of the dog, from its puppyhood all the way to its the time when it's ready to enter the working field or the theater, involves making sure that the dog is environmentally sound. It's comfortable around people, and it's comfortable around different surfaces, around noises and so forth. And so the opportunity for undergraduates to learn from the program, for veterinary students to develop their clinical skill set in reproductive management are all quite real, not to mention graduate students in things like cognitive behavioral psychology and engineers in brain imaging, all of the very much sophisticated. We've just finished a proposal where we've engaged people in fluid dynamics in the College of Engineering to do 3D predictions of how vapor behaves in different environments. So it's a tremendously transdisciplinary opportunity here that extends well beyond the dog's nose, but always winds up back there.
That's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. How long from the time of birth, this is a question from Facebook, until the dog is ready to work?
About a year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 1 year before that actually takes place. And how long are they at Auburn University before they continue their socialization and additional training elsewhere is another question that came up.
So CPS has developed a very specific protocol for what we call puppy development, as you suggest. And that takes advantage of a whole lot of different partnerships, but the development and socialization activities are about 6 months. And then the dogs beyond that get some basic training. And while again, we are not in the business of producing dogs to provide for the national need, which is significant, by about the end of their first year, they are available, if they're not being used in terms of our own research program to validate methodologies and so forth, for sale to entities that focus and specialize in the working dog, particularly the detector canine.
You know, I feel spoiled because I work at Auburn, and every so often we can invite the dogs to come in and show us, give us an example of what they do. And so to see it firsthand, it really is remarkable. It's fun and it's exciting, and to see them actually do it. How can individuals that don't live in Auburn have an opportunity to learn about this program? Is there a particular place that they can go to online where they can learn more about the program and continue to help it?
Well, absolutely. First of all, the Auburn University College of Veterinary Medicine Canine Performance Sciences program has a Facebook page. So anyone that's interested can just type in all of that. Canine Performance Sciences will probably get you there. Obviously, as the administrative point of contact for the program, anyone that's hearing me now or hears this in a post recording is welcome to contact me. My email address is Bartol, B-A-R-T-O-L, at auburn.edu, and I will certainly put you in touch with anyone that would be able to specifically answer your questions. We will certainly entertain visitors. We don't have a tour guided activity routinely, but we certainly do support visitors that come that want to meet with or see the activities of the program, which can be interesting. And we do have visitors. We like to know you're coming because these guys are very, very busy with the research that they do. But we'd be happy to hear from you and make those arrangements.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. There's a couple more questions that have come through as we're nearing our segment here. One of those is, if there are perfect conditions in the environment, what is the distance that they can send the vapor order, static or moving? And, you know, we talk about them being better than machines. I imagine that means because their environment they can adjust to. So if you can share a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Well, honestly, I think the issue of how far does very much depend, as the questioner suggested, on the environment. And in the real world, there is no perfect environment. In fact, we just completed fairly detailed discussions with the folks in engineering that do fluid dynamics, is what they call it. We call it vapor phenomenology, to address and ultimately get a more specific answer to the question that this person has asked. How do vapors of different types, some of them are going to be lighter than air, right? They're going to behave one way. Some of them are going to be heavier than air. Are they in an indoor situation where you have a HVAC system blowing air around? Are they outdoors? All of these things, as the questioner suggests, will affect that. So I can't, nor could CPS, I think, say, oh, it's 6 feet or 10 feet or 100 feet. If the wind is, if you're downwind from something, you're going to detect it, especially if you're a dog, you're going to detect it very quickly, as opposed to being upwind from it and all of that. So apologies for not having an absolute number, but again, it's a very dynamic situation. Our vaporwake dogs, of course, are bred and then reinforced through training to sample the air. We do have, improvised explosive device dogs that focus more on static sources, something hidden under, under a tree or buried in the ground, even these kinds of things.
Is there work being done to support the current pandemic that we're in with COVID?
Right, yeah. So actually in the 2015, 2016 period, well before the pandemic was an issue in the world, our investigators in CPS and their colleagues had demonstrated and published a paper showing that detector dogs can be trained to detect viruses and discriminate between different strains of viruses. So that's a validated principle. The issue of working with COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 specifically, of course, poses a challenge because this is a lethal virus, right? And so technology also being developed before the pandemic ever came along involves the idea that one could capture odors in a matrix of some kind, a gel or other type of material, so that you don't have to have the dangerous source of the odors there, such as the virus in this example, but you are capturing the odors, and therefore you could train the dog on the actual odors without having the threat of the viral agent, or for that matter, an explosive agent or other threat agent there, yet the dog is actually being trained on the real odor and not something just similar to it. And this is a game changer that CPS has also led in with colleagues at, by the way, the National Institutes of Standards and Technology.
That's wonderful. I'm looking forward to how that progresses and to hearing more about that in that near future. Can you tell us about the Auburn Dog Prison Program? That's a question that also came through from my Facebook viewers. I'm really happy that they're engaging us and asking these questions right now.
Sure. So I mentioned the puppy development program. Many years ago, based upon a reasonable approach, the idea was maybe we'll develop these puppies in the homes of very thoughtful people, kind of like we probably all think we've heard about in the Seeing Eye program, where dogs stay in a family home for a period of time and get used to people and so forth. The dogs that came through that program did well, but only about 20+% of them that came through that program were environmentally sound enough to continue to move through the training program. So people within the CPS program said, how could we have a more rigorously defined indoctrination and puppy development situation? And the prison opportunity came along such that trustees within prison environments could be given a very specific program to help develop the puppies. They could earn credit toward even an associate's degree along the way. And it turned out when that program became defined and implemented more broadly, the success rate was more in the neighborhood of 80% than 20%. So the proportion of pups that ultimately matriculate through that program that are now able to move further into their training and advance as even the highest quality detector dogs, we call those the vaporwake dogs, the Ferrari of detector dogs, right? That program has been remarkable on two fronts: advancing the percentage of dogs that are successful in their processing through the program, and facilitating the development of the prisoners who contribute to the training and development of the dogs themselves.
Remarkable. Listen, Doctor, in the last 2 minutes, what I'd like to be able to do is to extend a thank you on behalf of the association, the Auburn Alumni Association, for joining us today and sharing this exciting and important news about the significant work that you and your team are doing at Auburn University for the Canine Performance Sciences. We welcome you back at any point in time. Thank you for joining us. Also, I'd like to be able to share that September 24th, that's next week at 11:30, we will spend 18 minutes and 56 seconds with Alan Green. He will discuss how the athletic department had to pivot with COVID and what steps have been taken to ensure all Auburn's student athletes are staying healthy and safe, as well as what the first football game would look like. Doctor, thank you for joining us. Until then, please stay safe, and War Eagle.
War Eagle.